So the first thing I want to start with is a little diagram explaining the various different types of paganism and witchcraft that are available. And as with anything complicated, of course, it's a Venn diagram. So we've got a big green circle for paganism. There are people who don't subscribe to any particular tradition, so they'd be eclectic pagans. Wicca is clearly pagan. There are some witches, so Wicca is also witchcraft. There are some traditional witches and folkloric witches that don't actually necessarily identify as pagan. Some of them do. So I guess there should be a fuzzy green area in there as well. Fairy and reclaiming are witchcraft, and they also identify as pagan. So they that's why their blob is touching the main green blob. Then we have polytheist Wiccans, such as me, so people who believe in many gods, and also heathenry-inspired Wiccans overlapping with heathenry. Now, there are some heathens who do identify as pagan and some who don't, so that's why they're overlapping with the pagan blob. Then we have polytheists who identify as heathens, and obviously actually pretty much all heathens are polytheists as well. See how it's difficult to draw this Venn diagram? And then we have polytheist heathens who identify as pagan as well. But yeah, clearly, like most heathens are polytheist, or there might be henotheists, which is like people who worship one particular deity whilst acknowledging that others exist. Right, then we have Druidry, and there's the ADF. I think that's pronounced Anadricht Fine. That's my best guess. Never heard it actually said out loud, so I'm not sure. Then we have pagan druids, and then there's also universalist druids and cultural druids. So, for example, Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, or the previous one, was seen at an Eisteddfod. Clearly, that doesn't mean he's a pagan druid. He's just showing up and doing his Welsh culture thing. So yeah, it's kind of complicated. But and you can see the pagan umbrella is kind of fraying at the edges. But I thought it was worth making these distinctions, because when we talk about paganism and witchcraft and Wicca and the distinctions between those things, it gets confusing unless you've got some sort of Venn diagram, wibbly wobbly Venn diagram in mind. Okay. So on to the main topic of the video. And the main topic of the video is, what are the basics of the craft? Now, I'm a Wiccan. I am a Gardnerian Wiccan, and I practice inclusive Wicca. So I'm going to talk from the point of view mostly of being a Gardnerian Wiccan. Okay. I'll try to bring in comparisons with other traditions, but you can take the girl out of Wicca, but you can't take the Wicca out of the girl, or something like that. Anyway, right. So the first thing is to think about is casting a circle. So we witches and Wiccans don't have temples, like churchy thingies for the most part. So we have to recreate our sacred space each time. And because we're working magic in that sacred space, it needs to be more of a magical container than if you're just doing regular worship type stuff. So when you cast a circle, what you're trying to do is create a magical bubble that's going to contain the energy that you're going to create within it. So some people see that as a sphere, and other people see it as a kind of a cylinder, or just maybe a fence. Either way, the point is to stop your high energy magic from leaking into your surroundings, right? So once you've cast the circle or sphere or cylinder, then you want to orient it to the cosmos. Now, a lot of traditional witches actually can't create a compass, which is kind of similar to a circle, but also different in that they see it as they see it as very different. I really don't understand the differences, but I just wanted to flag up that they see it as a different thing than the Wiccan circle. Okay. So anyway, we've created this magical container, and now we're going to we would then view it as a microcosm of the macrocosm. So it's a little bubble of universe that's mirroring the big universe that's around it. And so to that end, it needs to have the directions. It needs to be told about the directions. Okay, so we have north, east, south, and west, and each of those is associated with one of the four elements, the classical four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And different traditions have different associations for the quarters, but it's each element is assigned to a quarter. Now, it's worth thinking about the idea that earth is basically solid, water is basically liquid, fire is basically energy or plasma, and air is basically gas. So it's, although, you know, people like to take the mickey out of the classical four elements, they're actually the four states of matter, right? So anyway, so we've created this bubble and we've called upon the guardians of the four directions to create this space. And so they become, they create the microcosm of the macrocosm. And also they are spirits that watch over the space to protect us from anything dodgy that might come and knock on our door. Okay, so once we've done that, we then consecrate some incense. Now, the purpose of incense is to welcome beings that are friendly and helpful, and to banish any entities that we don't want. So that's why we have nice smelling incense. And we would also consecrate water and salt, and these come from originally from the Key of Solomon, and are possibly even older than that, because I think you can trace them back to ancient Egyptian magic, and they've been part of the Western mystery tradition of magical doings for centuries. Okay, so so water obviously represents the element of water, and salt represents the element of earth, which seems illogical to me, but there you go. And then incense represents air and fire. So now we've created a nice space that is welcoming to people and welcoming to the gods. And then in that space, we can do our rituals. Great. So how do we go about raising energy? So one of the traditional ways of raising energy is dancing. A lot of people make a lot of noise about the concept of polarity. Well, the simplest and easiest form of polarity is to make the connection between self and other, and to use that tension to raise energy. If you're going to use polarity to raise energy, then that's the best possible method to do so. Self, other, ultimate polarity, spirit and matter, that's another good one. I personally don't believe that male and female make a polarity. Your mileage may vary, of course. So anyway, so you've made some energy, and then obviously you might want to do some spells, right? So usually that would be healing. It would be maybe helping somebody to get a job. And in some cases, we might do some kind of binding spell. So like binding Donald Trump to stop him harming people, and other useful magic. So but before we do the spells, we usually tend to do them in the end. We might do a seasonal ritual to celebrate Halloween, which most of us call Samhain, or one of the other 8 festivals of the Wheel of the Year, which I'll talk about in another video. Now, we can do the celebration of the festival either by some pre-written kind of play type script that we've devised. Sometimes it's spontaneous, and sometimes it involves activities that are relevant to the season, so like apple bobbing for Samhain, or talking to the ancestors, or talking to the gods, whatever it happens to be. So that's the kind of middle part of the ritual. Okay, the important bit. And then at the end, we usually do cakes and wine. And the point of cakes and wine is to share food between all the participants in the ritual, and also with the gods. And cakes and wine is a very beautiful ritual that involves sharing your consecrating the wine and the cake, and then sharing them amongst all the participants. And then at the end of the ritual, we would then uncast the circle, say goodbye to the quarters, and then go on our merry way. So there are lots of variations, and different groups do these things differently with different words. They're all still valid witches and Wiccans, and different bits of liturgy will be meaningful and helpful for different people, and that's fine. And I think the big thing for me about Wicca is that it's an earth-based religion, so it's all about getting in touch with nature and connecting to something greater than ourselves, and celebrating being alive, which is like, it's amazing that we're alive. That's just an incredible thing. And I suppose I should say, given that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that's another reason why it's miraculous that we're alive. During the pandemic, obviously, we've had to adjust our rituals, and some of us have moved the rituals online. And there's some interesting stuff you can do with that, because if you've got different people in different geographical locations, then you can get the most northerly person to call the northern quarter, or that kind of stuff. And it's also useful if each participant is doing the key parts of the ritual in the space where they are, and then we kind of envisage all coming together on the astral. But it's still not as good as the real thing, in my opinion. So yeah, that's a brief overview of what witches do, and or what Wiccans do for the most part. And I will just share my screen again. So that's my diagram again. Here we go. For the reading, I would recommend reading Traditional Wicca, A Seeker's Guide by Thorn Mooney. It's very excellent. The Classic Witchcraft for Tomorrow by Doreen Valiente. If you're interested in traditional witchcraft, then I recommend The Crooked Path by Kelden. Very accessible book, very enjoyable. And if you're interested in inclusive Wicca and all of the related topics, then I would recommend my book, All Acts of Love and Pleasure, Inclusive Wicca. And of course, check out my other videos. I've got some potted history of witchcraft, key ideas in paganism, and also I've done one on witch words and cultural appropriation and what have I missed? Potted history of paganism is what I missed. So check out the channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another one of my rambles. And finally, don't forget my new books, Dark Mirror, The Inner Work of Witchcraft, and The Night Journey, Witchcraft as Transformation, which are available from shop.doreenvaliente.org. Okay, have a great evening. Take care. See you next time. Blessed be.